Senator Richard Burr, as well as others, are under an incredible amount of scrutiny because it appears that they used their forewarning some time ago, about a month ago, about what was likely to happen with coronavirus here in the United States to sell off a massive amount of stock. Let me catch you up on the basic facts and then we have updates. Soon after he offered public assurances that the government was ready to battle the coronavirus, the powerful chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Richard Burr, sold off a significant percentage of his stocks, unloading between 628,000 and 1.72 million of his holdings on February 13th in 33 separate transactions. A week after he sold those stocks, the market began a sharp decline and has lost about 30% of his value since then, which, even by my, non-savvy, investor stuff, he saved hundreds of thousands of dollars at the very least. And we also know that apparently NPR has obtained a secret recording from February 27th where he gave a VIP group at an exclusive social club like a preview of what was really going on, while his public statements were still, we got this, it's all under control, you don't got to worry about it. So we've got a lot more to update you on after that. But Brett, since you're here, I talked about this a bit with Anna. What are your thoughts on Richard Burr and the others apparently cashing in?
So my read on the way that the general finance community thought about the economy before this all went down was that the general lay of the land was that the big folks, Merrill Lynch and various other not private wealth management firms, were already kind of nervous. They
Mm-hmm.
were looking around saying, "Hey, I'm not." I talked to one guy who was like, "We have experienced 12 years of unprecedented growth." So essentially, that he's been telling his clients to take a more defensive approach when it comes to their stock portfolios. So to see certain individuals gently nudge their stock investment portfolio away from an aggressive stance, not a big deal. You would probably have seen that anyway. And when you start hearing little bits of whispers about coronavirus saying this might
Mm-hmm.
disrupt some element of the supply chain, but Wuhan's far away from folks, we'll adjust a little bit. But Richard Burr does not have that defense.
Yeah.
Burr essentially said, I he told a private group of well-connected people, I have insider information that says that this will have a bigger effect than what I then am representing to the general public about how they should react to things. And if you look at leaders, certain leaders do that anyway. Like your parents when you were a kid looked at you and said, listen, everything's fine, when maybe it wasn't fine. Maybe they were worried about financial situations that your family was having, but they told you there still is a Santa Claus and there still will be a Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
But then to see him go and liquidate much of his stocks and utterly change his position to in the proportion that we're looking at, which is almost half of his money,
Mm-hmm.
which is insane. Um, at that point, he is self-incriminated, and this is not acceptable, and this should not stand. And what's frustrating is that there's a lot of people out there who are looking for leadership in time.
Yeah.
Like Trump's approval rating is at 55% in specifically in relation to how he's handling the crisis, right? But so people want to support you. Richard Burr will have some kind of bump and insulation from this because everyone is just looking for leadership in this time, but we shouldn't give it to him.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Burr
Yeah.
did something absolutely terrible, and so did all his cronies who made these moves.
Yeah, and let's note that it wasn't just him. I want to give details on some of the others. By the way, I am seeing your super chats. Thank you, everybody at home. I saw John T. Your support vibes are very much appreciated, and Nathan, thank you for your message as well. So Richard Burr was the first public. I think it was ProPublica, and one other organization had the big expose on him initially, but he wasn't the only one. So Richard Burr also apparently dumped a bunch, or sorry, Jim Inhofe dumped a bunch. He says it's a more complicated story, but he did. Dianne Feinstein dropped a lot of stock. Now, supposedly, I'm reading reports that stock was at a 52-week low at that point, which might have triggered the sell-off because it later bounced back for a couple of weeks and then the market went under. It wasn't potentially quite the same thing, but who knows? I personally think that we should be looking into all of their stock sales over the course of the past 6 or 8 weeks. But I did want to let you know that there is a lot of pressure coming in across the political spectrum for Richard Burr to come clean. And I want to show you one example of that I did not expect I would have to. Here is Tucker Carlson.
So you may have seen the news reports this afternoon. The chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee sold more than $1 million in stock in mid-February after learning how devastating the Chinese coronavirus could be. He had inside information about what could happen to our country, which is now happening, but he didn't warn the public. He didn't give a primetime address. He didn't go on television to sound the alarm. He didn't even disavow an op-ed he'd written just 10 days before claiming America was, quote, better prepared than ever for coronavirus. He didn't do any of those things. Instead, what did he do? He dumped his shares in hotel stocks so he wouldn't lose money. And then he stayed silent. Now, maybe there's an honest explanation for what he did. If there is, he should share it with the rest of us immediately. Otherwise, he must resign from the Senate and face prosecution for insider trading. There is no greater moral crime than betraying your country in a time of crisis. And that appears to be what happened. We'll have more on the story tomorrow.
So basically, it was Tucker Carlson saying it appears that he betrayed his country in a time of crisis. He needs to come clean. He implied that he should potentially resign. Now, that's good, and you wouldn't expect someone at Fox to be doing that necessarily. But he's using his this is important voice where it feels crafted and purposeful. But anyway, it's not just him. Let's just briefly go to someone I generally agree a little bit more with, and that is AOC, who said, as Intel chairman, Senator Burr got private briefings about coronavirus weeks ago. Burr knew how bad it would be. He told the truth to his wealthy donors while assuring the public that we were fine. Then he sold off $1.6 million in stock before the fall. He needs to resign. It's and by the way, we've been alluding to others. Senator Loeffler is another. She said it's stomach churning that the first thoughts these senators had to a dire and classified COVID briefing was how to profit off this crisis. They didn't mobilize to help families or prep response. They dumped stock. Senator Loeffler needs to resign as well. And so what do you think about Tucker Carlson and AOC pushing for something? Is that a harbinger of the end times, or have we reached a new level of unity in America?
I mean, on the one hand, it underscores a more populist approach to politics in America. That's something that Tucker goes for performatively and that AOC goes for genuinely. It is amazing to see Tucker Carlson, foppish Swanson broth, Tucker Carlson try to angle for populism. Another thing he did on a show yesterday was talk about how this will expose, and it's actually also similarly how you pitch it. It's also kind of strangely interesting the way he was pitching, the way this will expose the sham of higher education, how all these institutions of higher learning are saying that you can stay home but still charging you rent for your tuition and room and board while this is happening. But that's it. It does expose this undercurrent of populism in America. But I do want to focus on everything, on one specific thing. It's like the way Silicon Valley handles things. It's like the way that politicians also have kind of embraced handling things. When they mess up early, we should remember it. And not every time they might mess up. They might have made choices that were essentially triage based, looking at what would affect people most at the beginning. And then toward the end, you might see larger implications that they weren't quite equipped to handle, and maybe they handled it wrong. But in this situation, the way he triaged things, we need to remember.
Yeah.
He looked at it. He's like, I have new information. If it were a hospital and people came in, it would be let's handle the most vulnerable first.
Yeah.
He did the opposite of that. He handled himself first. That's and that's not okay, because this isn't a life and death situation. This is his stock margins. This is his portfolio. This is him going on probably calling someone who's telling him, I don't have, who probably themselves doesn't even have that information, and him saying, listen, we need to do this now.
Yeah.
And then we'll handle people. And that's unforgivable, and we should all remember it. And I agree with everyone that's saying that he should suffer the consequences for it.
Yeah, and they had to be dragged to the position of let's do something for regular people as well.